Hello, everyone. My name is PrimeTime Moff, and welcome to the premiere month of the podcast-only monthly show, Talking Toons, where each month I'll be joined by a new special guest, and across 2 episodes we'll be discussing tunes and toys from our childhood. In the first episode, we discussed multiple shows and toys, and in the follow-up episode, which is this one, we'll discuss a more specific show chosen by our guest. And I'm joined once again by an amazing first guest. He was my first round draft pick. He was. It was the first
You
man
have
I
to say
thought of.
that.
But to be fair, he was the first one. You were the first one I thought of when I thought about it, and like 2 or 3 months ago, whatever it was, I first said to you, "Do you fancy this?" And it
Yeah.
is the wonderful Pete from Transformers: The Show. Again, Pete, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me, mate. It is a pleasure to talk to someone who loves cartoons as much as I do.
Same, exact same. So this is your pick. So the premise is the guest gets to pick a show and or toy line. Kind of mostly it'll be a show that's got a toy line, and we'll talk a bit more in detail. Can you let the listeners in on the shows that you have picked?
So for me, it was the Marvel animation of the early 90s. So for me, it was the X-Men cartoon, the first run, not X-Men 97 that we've just seen. It was the first run back in 1992. And the Spider-Man, the animated Spider-Man from 1997.
Epic. So why have you picked those as your choice?
Because I think it was the biggest thing that stuck out for me was, the superhero aspect. I was that archetypical boy growing up in, the 80s, 90s, where, you know, superheroes were my thing. I wanted to be a superhero. I played superheroes. I read about superheroes. And I think I'm trying to think back. I didn't have a massive background knowledge, in terms of X-Men and Spider-Man. I know, I'd known, like we said in the previous episode with my mum working in a video shop, I'd seen an episode of Spider-Man and Friends. I hadn't seen, the original, X-Men cartoons, but I, I lived on a small road. I had some friends that lived just up on the corner, and the family was a boy and two girls, and the boy collected comics. Okay, so we were quite lucky in the paper shop at the bottom of our road on the kind of the shopping precinct sold comics. Okay, so from everything from DC to My Little Pony to Marvel, Transformers, Thundercats, you name it, it was like a comic shop,
Amazing,
mate.
amazing.
It was wicked, and it was just a paper shop. It was literally just a paper shop. It had, I would just say, it probably had as big a comic section as it did greetings cards.
Oh,
Uh, Mate, it was amazing. I don't know if the guy particularly loved comics. I was too young, right? But I knew of X-Men and Spider-Man because my
yeah.
friend collected the comics. And then we started to have this, we had Saturday morning entertainment. Okay, so it was obviously the X-Men first, and I can remember it was on Live and Kicking. They'd have Trevor and Simon and da da da, and then X-Men would be about quarter to 10. Okay, it would be about quarter to 10, and it'd go until, like, I don't know, 10 past 10. And I just, like we said at the beginning, the theme tune, the the intro, it hooked you as a kid. It was like, oh my god,
Yes.
you can still hum. It's one of those theme tunes that you can still hum, in your head. And I think they nailed it. You only know in retrospect. As a 10-year-old kid, I'm not there going, oh, the animation was fantastic and the storytelling was amazing, and I love what they did when they expanded the characters and their personalities and stuff. But it it was the animation was such that it made you want to watch it.
Yes.
You know, for it, the colors were bright, it was vibrant. You know, the action sequences were well put together. You know, it had superheroes, lasers. You know, all of those stuff, and it hooked you in, and you became part of the story.
Yeah.
And it made me then want to try and rationalize what was going on, you know, in the comic world. You know, because you there was no correlation, as there often is, you know, between, or as there often isn't, shall I say, between the comics and you know, maybe, you know, the cartoon media that they release and stuff. You know, they go off on different tangents because the comics don't lend themselves to great TV stories, etc. But I can remember watching the first one, and you know, they lost more. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it already. You know, they're taking on the Sentinels, they lose Morph, and already within, you know, the first episode or two, you've got a Jeopardy aspect, you know,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
you're in the 90s, and you know, you're potentially watching, and he didn't die, but you think he did, you think he gets blasted.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think I really felt at the time that I wanted that to be on a Monday or a Tuesday afternoon, right? I you know, it didn't deserve to be hidden in this bigger program.
Yes.
You know, it deserved to have, right, okay, 4 o'clock X-Men. But it was Saturday morning, and I think that's what started my love for Marvel. Because obviously, you know, I am a Transformers guy, and I will be forever. But you know, as we've mentioned previously, you know, we've got little branches into other
Of
areas,
course.
and you know, I love telling people I was a fan of Marvel before it became popular, right? You know, the Avengers, the Iron Man, the Captain America. You know,
See, I do the same. I do the same. I always say I'm a huge Deadpool fan. I have always comics up to post Cable and Deadpool when he became proper popular. I have every single appearance, like literally if he's in one cell of a comic, I have it because I was that in love with the character. But you're right, like at that point, it is very much the X-Men and Spider-Man cartoon that start to give it a bit of popularity. I think it's out the back of them that we eventually then get the X-Men and Spider-Man movies from Sony and Fox. I think it's their popularity shows that, well, these are both Fox Kids shows, weren't they?
Yeah,
As well, when we think back.
yeah, they really
But
were.
and before that, you know, for like you, I had a memory of, or an only recollection of the Spider-Man from the Spider-Man cartoon. No,
Yeah,
Spider-Man. Like the
yeah,
original Spider-Man cartoon theme tune, dead easy, sits in your head.
yeah.
Spider-Man as Amazing Friends is one of my absolute favorite cartoons of all time because I feel as if there was 100 episodes of that because I felt as if I watched that many, and there really wasn't. I just clearly watched them so many, and not many people will get this, but I know there's a handful. Well, there was a show up here called Glenn Michael's Cartoon Cavalcade, and he would tour Scotland doing a wee show, and he always showed the Spider-Man as Amazing Friends. So I saw that. It was one of the first cartoons I ever saw on the big screen, and was just like, I'm captivated. But when it came to X-Men, my only knowledge of X-Men characters, and I don't even know if I knew they were X-Men, was from the Marvel Secret Wars figures. I
Yeah.
had the Magneto, and I had a couple others, but on the back it would show, like, as the beautiful cards of the 80s did, would show you the other toys you could get.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew these characters, but without knowing they were X-Men. Like, it wasn't until I watched the X-Men cartoon I was like, oh, it's Wolverine character, and you know,
Yeah.
Cyclops and stuff. And then I remember when Iceman came into it, and I'm like, I know Iceman from Spider-Man is Amazing Friends, but it was really cool because both of them are slightly different in the style of their animation, but they also had crossover as well. They had there was aspects where they crossed over at points as well. It was just two very well put together shows that, as you said, that first episode with Morph, it showed you that it's not a proper kids cartoon. It's not for, it's more for a slightly grown up child. It's maybe more for an early teens child. It's probably aimed exactly at the age we were, that it just was perfect. And both, having rewatched both of them fairly recently, I rewatched the X-Men before X-Men 97 came on, and I had watched Spider-Man maybe just after pandemic with my boys. Both hold up really, really well. The storytelling in them is really strong. And what's brilliant about them is when you do the big 3 or 4 episode arcs. You know, Spider-Man did a huge split arcs of, you know, much more than that, and kind of kept stories going throughout. But these big arcs and big storytelling show you the difference to in the 80s, where it was a lot of them were just episodic, just one episode at a time. You could, you know, we talked about it in the episode about you could watch the theme tune, know enough, and then enjoy the episode. That was what a lot of the 80s shows were. They were built to be like that. Come in the 90s, they started to go, let's tell a story, let's have an end game, let's where we're going, and that's really clever.
Yeah, I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head, mate, because that was something I was going to mention, is the fact that, you know, the likes of Thundercats and He-Man, they were standalone episodes. Okay, if you didn't watch it for 6 weeks and then watched episode number 7, you didn't need to watch episodes 1 to 6. You know, they might have introduced a new character, but there is no there's no continuation. You're not going to miss out on anything. But, you know, I think the, you know, Knights of the Sentinels, you know, which was that kind of, you know, that opening, you know, 2-3 parter, you know, told a story. You know, it had, I think it had layers of plot. You know, you've got Jubilee finding out she's a mutant and joining the team. You've got the battles with, you know, the Sentinels and stuff, and they start to flush out the characters. And I think that was the 90s, right? Because they started to go, do you know what? Those people that were watching cartoons in the 80s are now getting a bit older now, and they need something that's a little bit more, for want of a better description, advanced, you know, a little bit more substance to it, right? Because they're growing up. And, you know, I think back then they're looking at the media and going, the media needs to grow with those individuals. And I think you certainly got that with, you know, with X-Men, because X-Men were quite clever. You know, they tried to make, I think there was always a little bit of a undertone with some you know, the politics and you know, stuff about it, you know, and Genosha and that, and you didn't have that with Spider-Man, but it was a different, it's telling a different story. But I loved the, you know, the plot development of so many of those characters in Spider-Man, you know, where they, you know, would take like Flash Thompson and you know, all that kind of stuff that you'd seen in the comics and stuff, in that development. But they're trying to, you've got 20 minutes to try and show it, you know, and build on it over a couple of weeks, and you can't do it in, you know, a 20 minute. You know, you need to do it in stages across, you know, the season, you know, the weeks and the seasons and stuff. But I think for me, it was always the animation. That's what captivates it, and I feel like that sometimes now a bit when I read comics and stuff. Okay, they, you know, the story can be really well written, but it's the artwork that brings the story to life. And it's the same with cartoons. You know, you can have the best story in the world, if the animation and the character design isn't up to it, you'll lose it. Completely lose it. You know, completely lose it in the background. And I think, you know, X-Men, you know, X-Men had a massive run. You know, 5 years at 20 episodes, you know, 20 episodes a season. What a run! It just shows how well it was written.
And what they really did well is translate some of the stories from comics, like Days of Future Past and Rise of the Phoenix and Dark Phoenix, and some absolute brilliance. Like, there's so many characters in it and so many stories that I'm like, that would make a great movie. Like, and some of them they've attempted and they've not landed quite as well. Like, Apocalypse is just such a good villain in the cartoons. You know, I think to the when he did the 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse and bringing the, you know, Angel in and Archangel. Just Archangel is just one of the coolest designs And listen, the 90s, the way they translated it, the outfits and stuff onto the show, onto the animation, just made some of the characters just look so much better than they ever did in print. Like really, really did. And Archangel's always been a favourite of mine for that, for just being looks very like I'm noticing in your background. I know this is audio, but I'm noticing your background motherboard. I'm seeing motherboard, and I'm like,
Yeah,
that's kind of like Archangel.
yeah. I, but again, that arc in terms of, Angel then gets corrupted and then starts to battle with himself, and then becomes an X-Men kind of thing. How advanced is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that story arc?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know that.
Add in the aspect of Rogue, because Rogue was in the struggling with who she was, struggling to
Yeah,
accept her acceptance of who she was, decides, no, I need to change, I need to, get rid of the mutant bit, and then decides, no, rightly so, it keeps to who she is, and then whereas Warren Worthington, is that right? That's
the
right.
third.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. He
yeah.
goes the opposite, and he can't accept who he is, and
Mm.
it leads to a point of, when you become Archangel, you're not hiding the wings, and you're not hiding your face quite as
Yeah,
easily as you did when you were Angel. And I think it's that they're showing you the consequences of, there's loads of bits, the undertones of things that as teenagers we would have been going through, and the struggle with
yeah,
identity, struggling who we are. It's so well written and so clever in doing that. And I mean, a lot of the Marvel stuff was like that. Stan Lee always talked about the success of Spider-Man being that his readers can relate to a Peter Parker struggling with being bullied, being a bit different, whereas you had characters before that were all perfect and all wonderful, and in the nicest way, your Iron Mans and your Batman, I'm never going to relate to them because they're billionaires. I could relate
yeah.
to a
Agreed.
teenager who can't fit in. I can relate
Yeah,
to aspects of the X-Men where there was the dysfunction in them as well. It was very, very clever. You can see that why they were so successful.
yeah. And again, we hark back to it, but you know, it was a stark contrast to the 80s, where you've got, you know, programs like G.I. Joe and Master of the Universe and Thundercats, and you've got all these individuals, regardless of who they are, chiseled, going out and saving the world. And but you're right, in terms of, relatability. No, do you want to be them? Of course you do. Do you find it exciting? Yeah, you do enjoy it. But like you're saying with, with Peter Parker and, a couple of the X-Men, I'm different. People don't like me because I'm different. Well, I, you know,
All teenagers
I,
feel that.
yeah, but I was probably still, my probably, school friends and school peers and stuff, they moved on and they're watching, football, and, they're getting into Biker Grove and Grange Hill, and, all those,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
the next stage of childhood. And I'm going, well, I can't wait till next Saturday because I want to find out what happened to
yeah.
Gambit.
Yeah, and my strongest long term friendship with the guy who's my best man, we became friends over stuff like this. Like
Yeah,
that was what we. It was you like that, I like that, and then suddenly that's you. And, we for
yeah,
years have always just sat and discussed. Whenever we catch up, we end up talking about old 90's cartoons or 80's cartoons, and X-Men, Spider-Man's always one that we bring up. And actually, to be fair, we're talking about the two, but they had some other good ones at that point in the Marvel stuff as well. The Fantastic Four one was all right. The Iron Man, Iron Man did have that aspect of being an alcoholic in the show. It did give that
mm,
kind of that bit. But the Spider-Man and X-Men are certainly the two best shows that have held up and have got
yeah,
a lot of love for them. And the cool thing, we talked about in the main episode about the aspect of toys coming out of shows from the 90's and 80's, and it's great fun to kind of pick your stuff up. I know you're a big fan of the Marvel Legends series,
mm,
specifically more the kind of retro card, which just look
yeah.
like 90's toys, but with better articulation. Just
Yeah, I,
amazing.
yeah. I think, going back to, going back to the toys at the time, I think I had a handful of each. I had a Blackbird from, X-Men, and I had a Wolverine and a Magneto, and I think I had the Wolverine cycle as well. But I didn't have, again, you had to be lucky at the time that Argos needed to be selling the toy line at the time. I was always going to get it. And it was the same thing. It was the same thing with the Spider-Man, but it was always, we keep saying this, but you and I are on the same page with this. The logos, the box design, the artwork that's telling you a story as you're looking at it. That's what makes me want to buy it, because you start reminiscing. And I think with the modern day Marvel Legends, the retro carded Spider-Man stuff, I see that Spider-Man logo in that font,
Yeah,
and I get transported. I
100%.
haven't even looked to see what the character is. I'm bought in because of the card.
Yes, yeah.
And this is the only time I've done it, but this is I get two variants.
Yes.
I get one that I keep on card, and one where I can actually enjoy the extra articulation and the the improved face sculpt or anything like that. But I'm going to have a wall at the minute. We're audio only, but at the minute I've got them on shelves behind the open versions. But I think the idea of having them all on a wall, and that Spider-Man logo being so prominent, mate. But again, what you need to do, you need to hook people in. You need to get people to give your show, your comic, your toy a chance. And you do it with the theme tune, you do it with the intro, you do it with the design. And that Spider-Man design, I think, holds up till, well, here we are at 2024.
I agree.
You know
I agree. I've stayed away from the Spider-Man figures, because if I buy one, I'll buy them all, because that's my I know how I'm like. Because I did that originally with the original Marvel Legends figures. I bought, all the original Marvel Legends figures. Well, they weren't even Marvel Legends to begin with. They were just Spider-Man. I can't remember if it was Amazing Spider-Man. I can't remember what it was called, but it was Spider-Man first, and then it evolved into Marvel Legends. And I had the box sets with the Sinister Six. That's still one of my favourite box sets. I remember picking up from Woolworths and just being like, I am so happy to buy this big box set. But I've not bought the Spider-Man. I bought the core X-Men characters because I thought, I'm going to go for it. I've got a Archangel pre-ordered that I look forward to. But the retro carded, and there's quite a few that have done that kind of retro card styles. Star Wars did it with their bits. The Star Wars ones I really like, because you could buy. So I have like Luke Skywalker in the retro line, so that like based on the 70s toy, and then the 6-inch Black Series one. I did the same with the Boba Fett. I have both versions, and I love that bit because it transports you back to when you were a kid and seeing them on. It's such a clever way to release toys. And the more companies that do it, the more I'm on board. We said in the last episode, I look forward to San Diego Comic Con to see what's next. What next bit of their childhood are they going to come back with that's going to go, oh, look at this cool thing. But your Spider-Man collection always impresses me. I'm like, I could easily fall down that rabbit hole. I'm trying my best not to. I think the good thing is I never had. I was at the point, what was it, 93, 94 they came out. I was at the point where I wasn't buying toys. I was buying Super NES and stuff like that. So I never had the toys. I don't have that affiliation with the toys. And I've got a Spider-Man because I've got a Spider-Man to have with Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which didn't have toys, but that's more my first memory of Spider-Man. So I was like, I need the Spider-Man for that. And then X-Men I got, as I say, the core characters, because what a core characters.
Oh, yeah. And Hasbro have done me dirty a little bit. So I was collecting the VHS X-Men, and they just stopped doing them.
Yeah,
because they brought out X-Men 97, which is an amazing series, and I really hope it gets a second season. But it came out with a toy line, right? So they have duplicated a couple of the characters, but then there's some new ones. So they've, again, very, very clever because you can
Yes.
go, oh, I'll get the X-Men 97 characters that they didn't do with the VHS ones. But they'll be slightly different size and
Yes,
slightly
I
different
know.
scale, and you'll go, do you know what? I'll just go all in for X-Men
The
97. And do you know what, Hasbro? Well done. Fair
yeah,
play.
the Sinister, Doctor Sinister, Mister Sinister, even sorry, Mister Sinister for the VHS one is, oh, what a beautiful figure that is. He's one of my favorite villains, and that was a
Yeah,
outstanding figure of him. But
yeah,
yeah, they did
yeah,
that because I felt the same as you.
yeah. But you just kind of like, what? I really wanted a Juggernaut. I wanted a Gambit in that line. Um, they've literally tickled it. They've literally tickled it. And I know what happens. I'll move them on and they'll do the rest. So I'm not going to be able to move them on
No,
because that will
hurt, yeah, it'll
just
hurt.
they will destroy me
Aye.
emotionally far more than when I thought Morford died in the first episode. Um, but but this is then it shows how good the character designs and stuff, and how I me as a individual is still so bought into something that is closer to 40 than it is 30 years old now. um I think, like you were saying, I want those um versions of the character that I look at and I go, "Da-la-la-la-la, da-la-la."
Yes.
it automatically prompts a response, not just going, "Oh, I really love the blue in Cyclops's uniform." It's not. It's like you look at the character and you go, "Right, what is the standout Cyclops moment from the cartoon that I remember?" That's how. That's how I measure. I think my love for a character.
Mm.
It's like, what does that character mean to me? I look at Spider-Man and the Aunt May, the Aunt May that Hasbro did with Doc Ock. I look at that character, I can hear her voice.
Yes.
I can hear, and the voice from the 97 series that from the voice actor that portrayed Aunt May. I've not given her an old lady voice. you know
Yeah, yeah.
it's that straight back into an episode where she's there talking to Peter Parker or something.
Yeah.
And that's what I want from my collection.
Yeah. Do you know the
Is
one
it
thing
giving
that
me
always
things like that?
stands me out for the two shows is the outstanding range of villains we had. You
Mm,
know, Spider-Man with the Sinister Six, X-Men with
yeah,
the Magneto and his mutants. Just
yeah,
some absolute stellar villains in both of them that
yeah,
you're not wanting them to be defeated because you don't want them to go away. Like Juggernaut. Juggernaut was a great character
yeah,
in the
yeah,
cartoons. Really, really was really fun. Um, I always liked Mysterio and Spider-Man. Just something about him. I don't know what it was. The special effects thing just really
yeah,
resonated. I like that. But I get it was the when you knew that the episode was going to have, I don't know, like the vulture, when the vulture comes in, or the lizard,
yeah,
or whatever the villain is, you kind of know, right, okay, this is the kind of challenge he's going to be facing, and
yeah.
some absolute stellar stuff.
Yeah, and again, it was that design. You go back to Thundercats or He-Man. We never found out how Mumra came to be, the ever living or further
Mm-hmm.
further. However, what Spider-Man did very well. Okay, how did Eddie Brock become Venom?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? The symbiote. Come on, what was the backstory between Sabretooth and Wolverine? You
Oh
found that
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
you
good one,
you
eh?
you yeah, you found that out. And that, I think, made it more enjoyable because it wasn't just a kind of, here's a character, here's a character. They weren't just trying to sell the toys. They was trying to sell you the story.
Yeah,
Because if you bought into it and enjoyed it, you would buy the toys, you know. And then you would read the comics and expand. I mean, the Marvel the Marvel media empire was big, when you and I were young, but it wasn't what it is now
No, it's a
by
juggernaut
any
now.
stretch.
Like,
Yeah,
frightening.
you're opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You really are. It was a comic line of various characters that they tried to boost the sales of by having toys and other media. And I think to do that, that 90s writing and the animation that we keep harping onto was like, oh wow, okay, all right, well let's and the comics flushed out a bit more.
Yes.
They were a bit darker, and like they're that Asteroid M. The biggest thing that sticks out for me in X-Men comics is Asteroid M, when Magneto's gone. Do you know what? You think I'm a bad guy? I'll show you I'm a bad guy. And rip the adamantium off Wolverine's skeleton, kind of thing.
Yes.
But you're like, that is so different. That is so different to what you would see, because they wouldn't show that in a cartoon,
No.
not on a Saturday
No.
morning. But I found out about that Asteroid M storyline because I watched the cartoon and I sought out
More.
the
Yeah.
comic line.
100%. 100%. I the exact same. I started to pick up from the library graphic novels and going. The joy of a graphic novel being that your story arc's fully completed in that, whether it be Dark Phoenix, whether it be, or even into later ones like House of M and World War Hulk. I always enjoyed picking up a graphic novel that had the complete arc of it, and it was like, if you get an old VHS and it'd have the 3 episodes of Headmasters, for example, the Transformers, your complete storyline is done in one bit, and that was a joy. One kind of last bit I wanted to kind of bring on it, but I missed the note say it that if anybody's listening and would like to know more about the backstory to X-Men, myself and Audimus Prime had the pleasure last year of interviewing Bob Skier for TFUK Con, and he was the writer on X-Men, Batman the Animated Series, Spider-Man, Gargoyles, like so many epic 90s shows, and also Beast Machines. So many epic shows, and it was an absolute joy to speak to him. So I highly recommend jumping onto our YouTube channel and going finding that. So we've come to the end. It feels like we could talk for another 3-4 hours, Pete, and I'm sure we will over of TFN weekend of toys and Transformers. Thank you so much again for being our inaugural guest on my show. I may get you to come back again in the future because I'm sure there's more we could talk about. But thank you so much for your time on these 2 episodes. Just give you a chance to tell everybody where they can find you, Pete.
I am on Twitter _Willis_Pete, where I will be talking probably random bits of rubbish, normally about toys, not just Transformers, other toy lines I love. And on a Friday night, myself and a couple of other guys run a YouTube show called Transformers The Show. We go live on a Friday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube. Drop in and find us. Search for Transformers The Show.
Right. Thank you so much, Pete. So that's been a look back at Spider-Man and X-Men. Look forward to chatting again next month with a new special guest. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast only show. Remember, there are, as well as this and the audio version of our main show, there are many more bits of content that we put on our YouTube at PTTV. So thank you so much. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Bye now.